Do you know what it feels like to be thrown away like garbage at 12 years old? To stand on the side of a dirt road, clutching nothing but fear in your small hands, watching your father's back as he walks away and never looks over his shoulder. That was the day my childhood ended. Before I continue, if you want to hear more stories like mine, please give this video a like and subscribe. It keeps these voices alive, because too many like me never lived to tell theirs. I was only 12. My feet were bare, my dress torn, my stomach gnawed with hunger. I screamed for him, my father. Please, don't leave me! But his stride never broke. He didn't turn, didn't hesitate. He left me there on the road, as if I had never been his blood. And the sky, God, I remember it. The sky was gray that day, swollen with rain, as if even heaven couldn't bear to watch. The days after were a blur of pain. I slept under broken roofs, begged for scraps, learned how to make my eyes wide and pitiful enough to earn a coin, a crust of bread. But hunger teaches you things innocence never should. Hunger teaches you the sound of opportunity in a stranger's voice. Hunger teaches you that survival sometimes means giving pieces of yourself away. By 14, the streets had eaten me whole. I was no longer a girl. I was something else, painted, perfumed, pushed into corners of nightclubs where men twice, 3 times my age placed their hands like ownership. I told myself it was better than starving. I told myself this was just another kind of road. One I had to walk until it ended. But every time I caught my reflection, smeared lipstick, hollow eyes, I saw the ghost of that 12-year-old abandoned girl screaming on the roadside. And then, one night, the world twisted into something I could never have imagined. The music in the club was loud, heavy with smoke and sweat. My name was called, and I stepped forward, draped in the only kind of glamour I could afford. A cheap red dress, sequins falling loose. I plastered on my smile, the mask I wore for every customer. The man was already waiting in the booth, his face hidden in shadows. I moved closer, prepared for the same empty ritual I had repeated countless times before. But then I saw his eyes. Those eyes. My heart slammed into my chest. My knees buckled. For a moment, I thought the room had spun out of control. But no, it wasn't a trick. It wasn't a nightmare. It was him, my father. The same man who had abandoned me on that road years ago. Sitting there, looking at me with a hunger that made my stomach curdle. Do you understand what kind of horror that is? To be abandoned as a child, only to be found later, not as a daughter, but as prey. He didn't recognize me, not at first. I had changed too much, but I recognized him. Every line of his face was burned into my memory, carved deep from the day he left me to die. My lips went dry, my body stiff. For a second, I wanted to scream his name, to rip his eyes out, to claw his face until he bled. But the music thundered, the lights blinked, and I knew. If I faltered, if I betrayed the truth too soon, he might vanish again. So I played along. I sat down across from him. My voice shook as I whispered, "What do you want tonight?" And when he leaned in, grinning, I smelled the same cologne he used to wear when I was a child. And I swear to you, in that moment, my soul cracked open. I sat across from him, my father, the man who had abandoned me to the wolves at 12 years old. And now here he was, in a nightclub, money in his hand, looking at me not as blood, not as his daughter, but as a woman for sale. I felt my throat close, my body trembling under the cheap red sequins of my dress. The music thumped through the walls, drowning the sound of my own heart. I had to hold my breath so he wouldn't hear it. He still didn't recognize me. His eyes were glossy with drink, his grin loose, shameless. "How old are you?" he asked, his voice a rasp. The same voice I used to hear calling me in from the yard when dinner was ready. The same voice that told me, "Stay here," before he walked away and left me to starve. I wanted to scream, to claw his face, to shout, "You made me this. You put me here." But instead, I smiled, a bitter, broken smile. Survival had taught me one thing. Sometimes you don't fight fire with fire. Sometimes you wait, let the flame lick close, until you can choke it with your bare hands. So I leaned closer. "Hold enough," I whispered. My stomach churned, bile burning my throat. Every word tasted like poison. He laughed, a deep, ugly laugh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out money. Dirty bills, folded, sweaty from his palm. He slid them across the table like a man buying fruit at the market. "Then let's not waste time," he said. And in that second, my mask slipped, my fingers brushed the bills, and my eyes lifted, locking with his. I let him see me, really see me. It was like striking him with lightning. His grin faltered, his brows furrowed, his drunken haze wavered as he searched my face. I watched the moment recognition hit him, the way his pupils shrank, the way his mouth fell open. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, it can't be." But it was. "It's me," I said, my voice low, shaking, thick with years of swallowed tears. "Your daughter, the one you left on the road." He went pale, his hands trembled. For a moment he looked like a man staring into a ghost. And in a way, he was. The room around us kept pulsing with music, the air heavy with smoke and perfume. But inside that booth it was as if time froze. Just him, and me, and the nightmare that had finally come full circle. You shouldn't be here," he stammered, his voice cracking. "You put me here." I spat. My smile was gone now. My face was bare, raw, scarred with truth. "Every night I've sold myself to survive. It's because of you. Every man's hands that touched me. Every time I bled. Every time I wanted to die. It's because you threw me away." He reached out, maybe to touch me, maybe to stop me. I slapped his hand back so hard it echoed even over the music. For the first time in years, he had no power. None. And I could see it eating him alive. I leaned closer, so close I could smell his shame, his fear. "You wanted a woman tonight," I whispered, my lips trembling. "You found your daughter instead, and you'll never escape that truth." He tried to speak, but no sound came. His face crumpled, his eyes wet. He stumbled from the booth like a man running from hell itself. And me? I sat there in the flashing lights, surrounded by men who didn't know my name, women who carried their own scars. I sat there shaking, trembling, but for the first time since I was 12, I felt taller than him, stronger. That was the night I realized some punishments don't need fists or knives or revenge. Sometimes the cruelest punishment is the truth itself. When he ran from that booth stumbling, pale as a ghost, I didn't chase him. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, he was the one haunted. And I was the ghost. But do you think that ended it? No, the truth never just ends. It lingers. It festers. It burns in ways you can't wash off. For days I couldn't sleep. His face kept replaying in my head. The horror when he realized who I was. The shame when my words cut through him like knives. Part of me felt powerful, yes, but another part, the part that was still 12 years old, barefoot on that road, felt broken all over again. I asked myself over and over, was that enough? Was watching him crumble under the weight of truth enough punishment for what he did to me? The streets whispered. News travels fast in dark corners. People said a man had collapsed outside the club that night, drunk, babbling about a ghost, about a daughter who cursed him. I didn't go after him. I couldn't. But I knew he was out there, carrying the weight of my face wherever he went. And yet, a darker thought poisoned me. What if he came back? What if he tried again, pretending it was all a mistake? Men like him, men who abandon, men who consume. They don't change. They just hide their hunger in different ways. So I began to plan, not like before, when I planned only how to survive the next night. No, this was deeper. This was planning how to live without chains, without the shadow of him over me. I started writing, a notebook hidden beneath the floorboard of the little room I rented above the club. I wrote every detail. The night he abandoned me, the years I spent in the streets, the men, the filth, the hunger, and finally, the night he came back as a customer. Every word was a scar carved onto paper. But those words gave me strength. They reminded me, I am not just what was done to me. I am the woman who survived it. Weeks later, I heard the news. My father had been found. Not dead, not yet, but broken. He'd been arrested, drunk, violent, shouting at the streets about curses and ghosts. The villagers laughed at him, called him mad. The man who once walked away so proud, so heartless, was now nothing but a stumbling shell. And do you know what I felt? Not pity, not joy, just emptiness. Because revenge, child, is never as sweet as people think. Revenge doesn't give you back what you lost. It doesn't return your childhood, your innocence, your smile. Revenge only gives you silence, the kind that still echoes at night. I never saw him again. I never wanted to. He died years later, nameless, alone, buried in a graveyard where no one left flowers. And me? I kept living. I carried my scars into every room, every glance, every breath. But that night, the night my father came to me as a customer, that was the night the world shifted. That was the night I understood. Monsters don't always come from the dark. Sometimes they give you life. Sometimes they wear the face of family. And if you take nothing else from my story, take this. You cannot choose where you come from, but you can choose what you become after. Look at me now, old, wrinkled, trembling, but alive, still telling you this story, still making sure his sin, his cruelty, does not disappear into silence, because silence is where monsters grow. And my voice? My voice is the blade that cuts them down. Child, let me finish. When my father died, people thought I would finally be free. They thought his absence would wash the blood, the pain, the shame away. But pain doesn't vanish with death. It lives in your bones. It whispers in your veins. It visits you in the quiet hours of night, when no one else can hear. For years I carried that weight. I walked through life with a smile painted on my face. But inside I was still that 12-year-old girl, barefoot on the road, abandoned by the only man meant to protect her. Do you know what's worse than pain? It's the lies people tell about it. They said, you should forgive him. They said, he was still your father. But tell me, child, what father abandons his daughter to the streets? What father returns years later, not with regret, but with desire, like a predator circling prey? No, some sins cannot be forgiven. Some scars are carved too deep. But listen carefully. Survival is not just breathing. Survival is choosing every day to rise, to fight, to make sure the chains that once broke you never break anyone else again. I built a life from ashes. I worked, I struggled, I saved. I helped girls like me, lost, abandoned, betrayed, find a way out of the darkness before it swallowed them whole. That lot became my revenge. Not his suffering, not his madness, not his lonely death. My revenge was living when I was never meant to. My revenge was helping others live too. And now, as I sit here, wrinkled and frail, I tell you this: the past cannot be erased, but it can be rewritten, with courage, with truth, with voice, because silence is where evil grows. I am no longer that child on the road. I am no longer the girl in the club. I am no longer the daughter of a monster. I am me, a survivor, a fighter, a woman who turned her wounds into weapons, her scars into stories, her pain into power. So when you leave this story, don't just remember the horror. Remember the lesson. Remember the voice of an old woman who should have been silenced long ago, but still speaks. And to my father, wherever he is now, may he hear these words, echoing louder than his cruelty ever did. You did not win. I did.